if we're not careful, it's going to become very bland. And the only way that you can differentiate yourself, it does come back to the building those relationships and the people element, because you are the difference. Because and therefore you need to get comfortable and being putting yourself, to kind of be you. And that's what we believe, that the best of you is who you really are, the best, rather than trying to be that automated, I have to turn up certain, and that's partly where that salesy thing came from. People felt they had to be this brassy sort of, and the same with leadership, you had to be this kind of really tough guy, and I say guy, because there was a time there where women were trying to be the similar. You had to be a specific tough, and you couldn't smile, you couldn't show any vulnerability or any of that. And it's the same with that sales thing. You have to be seen. You can almost see the people doing the process going through, and you're going, no, that's not. People are too wise to that now. So the only way people buy it is by trusting you and kind of. It's very hard not to buy into authenticity, and I don't mean, but the real people who you can genuinely see an element of vulnerability, an element of, oh, I got that wrong, but actually they've come back from that. It's just the real person, I think, is very hard to not buy into.
Hello, listeners. Hello, viewers, and welcome back to Leading with Integrity for the second time this week, and what is the first of a two-part episode. We're doing the annual bonus episode extravaganza for Christmas / end of the year thing that I do every year. Some say it's creating too much work for myself. Others say it's great fun. You draw your own conclusions. Anyway, so a two-parter. And to help me with that, today I'm joined by a husband and wife team. A while since we've had a duo like this on the show, and what a great partnership it is too. So I'm joined by Rachel and Ciaran McKenna of Woodhazel Consulting. They are all about helping you unlock the potential in yourself, in your business, in your marketing, in your sales activity. They're also genuinely great people to have a conversation with, which is why this is a two-part episode, because one episode was not enough to contain this conversation. So we'll be talking all about the various crossovers and intersections between leadership, communication, marketing, selling. And to get to the core of those issues, we'll start, as we do every week, with hearing a bit about Ciaran and Rachel's different career paths and how that has shaped what they do today. Then we'll talk about their area of expertise, the key philosophy behind it of collaboration and relationships. We, of course, talk about leadership as well, positivity, the role of those long-term relationships versus the one-off and the short-term view. One of the recurring themes that comes out of this conversation is about respecting that individuality of people for sales, for leadership, for life. And in the second part, tomorrow, we'll touch on more of these themes like authenticity, why leadership is about impact and not just having the right title, and more besides. And there's a very positive spin on all of it and a very positive outlook on life to be had from this as well. So it felt like a great episode to close out right before our Christmas special on Monday next week. So I hope you enjoy the episode, and I'll stop waffling about it and we'll get on with it.
Welcome to the Leading with Integrity podcast. Leadership talk for the modern manager. With your host, David Hatch.
So, Rachel and Ciaran, welcome to Leading with Integrity. It is lovely to have you on the show. It's been a long time coming. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yes.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thanks a million, David. Yes, and we've known each other a few years now. And in fact, you only had the pleasure of meeting Rachel a couple of weeks ago as well, wasn't it? So it was worth doing it for that, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Even if it doesn't record and we don't get an episode out of it, it's been worth it for that alone. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, to kick us off, I'm going to push you in at the deep end, really. So tell the listeners a bit about yourselves, your career history, how you've ended up doing what you do today and why you do it, really.
Lovely. Well, listen, thanks again, David. My name's Ciaran McKenna. I'm one half of Woodhazel Consulting, which is myself and my wife, Rachel. And we've been together for quite a few years. We were part of the generation that left Ireland in the late 80s and went over to the UK as graduate trainees. I did it in distribution for an electrical wholesaler. And I'll let Rachel tell her bit, but she went over in financial services. And it was, as was called in those days, a graduate trainee. So they would take you on for a couple of years and you'd learn everything there was to know about the business. You'd work in every department. You'd write little reports in each department. And they took time to actually train, coach, motivate you. And it was kind of like a job for life. And we thought this was brilliant because there wasn't a lot of work in Ireland at the moment. I got sent to Crawley because they couldn't get people to move to London purely because it was so expensive at the time. Whereas for us, we thought it was great because, again, Irish people had always moved to London and it was always a tradition of it. So I went over there and it was a big adventure. The first 2 years, as I say, I got sent around to the different branches and learned the trade, so to speak. But I knew sales was the bit I really liked and I enjoyed it. I'd done economics and philosophy in college. So I did like actually talking and listening and hearing and getting to know other people's views. So I kind of felt my first job was as a purchasing manager, and that was kind of like a little opportunity to learn how to sell, but be on the other side of it. And then when the opportunity came to be a sales rep in London, I took it. And my career moved on. I became sales manager for London, and then I became, the company acquired other companies and all the bits and bobs. So my career grew very much in sales management, but I really realized that actually sales management was the job I actually loved. We came back to Ireland. We made a decision it's 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
Literally this week, we came home for a wedding, and I had announced it. We had been discussing it, but I announced it at the wedding, as you do, and said we're coming back to Ireland. And it took us the best part of a year to get back and sell the house and all the bits and bobs. We were coming back for family reasons because my parents weren't well, and you do get a chance in life to decide what's important and what isn't. We had our daughter. She was 11 at the time. So it was a big decision. And I'm pretty sure if she'd have stayed, she'd have ended up in sales and marketing. But she came back to Ireland. She was very much part of our life back in Ireland. And most of my career then in Ireland was around a bit of the corporate world, but an awful lot of being there to get involved with my parents. So my job needed to be the flexible one, whereas when we were in the UK, it was the other way around. So a lot of my career was about actually being flexible and being there to help my dad. So I took on agencies and I took on consultancy work. And I suppose that kind of brings us up to where we are today from the point of view that Woodhazel Consulting is a combination of myself and Rachel doing the jobs that we love most.
Well, probably about interject really quickly and just to bring you up to speed where we're kind of aligned. As Ciaran sort of said, we both left after college. I actually trained as a teacher, having done economics and history, yes, and went over and joined financial services in a kind of a graduate scheme. Started out in selling, wasn't really for me, so moved into marketing, which I knew nothing about. So I kind of went back and qualified in marketing and did all of that. Realised I actually loved marketing because for me, it was the centre of the business. You kind of had to understand every element of the business to actually know how to market it. And I also like the fact that I still work very closely with salespeople. So, because for me, they were close to the customer. So for me, it was very important to kind of have that two-prong attack of understanding the strategy, but also aligning it with the real world. So I loved all of that. So I had the privilege when I was working, I worked with big companies like Legal & General and Canada Life. So because they were big companies, you got the privilege of being moved around quite regularly into different functions. So I got a really great breadth of marketing across the different areas. So that kind of gave me, and then as I say, when we moved back to Ireland, then I worked for a stationery company for a year, which was a completely different breath for me because it was obviously product driven as opposed to service driven, and got to go to Frankfurt for one of the big exhibitions, got to kind of pitch for business with big companies like, over here, they're Super Quinn, and they were their equivalents of Tesco's and, Waitrose and people like that. So it was a great exposure in a different way, and it kind of combined, I suppose, an element of sales and marketing and all of that element, which I really found great. Sadly, the crash came, the company folded. So, but again, I was lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time. The company I'd been working with in the UK was setting up an international company in Ireland. Happened to walk in at the right time, just a little bit to see if I knew anybody. And also that's where your networking worked really well, because obviously somebody had told me that actually check them out. There might be an opportunity there. They needed marketing. So I kind of got in early and, kind of again, worked with a great team there to build up the business. So that kind of kept me going right up to 2016 when the company was acquired, brought over. And with that then came, I suppose a shift, and which led to kind of a redundancy situation. And that for me was an opportunity then to kind of assess where do I want to go. And I moved into more consultancy, contracting and things like that, which I actually loved because
you did.
I love just getting back and doing projects and moving away from the politics. I think after anybody's gone through an acquisition and a big changed environment, they understand the dynamics of that and how difficult that can be. So it was kind of nice just to do the job. And, but then that brought us right up to, and then meanwhile you were setting up Wood Hazel Consulting, and I was using that as my mode, my route into using the contracting. So that kind of worked really well.
And I had, because Rachel was doing the work she was doing, we had the freedom to take a few risks with what I was doing. So I took on a few agencies, got involved with things that I wouldn't normally have done, with regard to helping people to set up a business in the stove industry and water heating and stuff like that. And the joy of that was, after my mother passed, my dad was a lovely, gregarious man and things like that. So actually, I was able to bring him on calls. Because I was working for myself, I could bring my dad with me. And we had a little West Highland Terrier, so he came as well. So it kind of ticked a few boxes. Customers were either dog lovers or they liked really nice, friendly old people who had a good story to tell. And I had an absolute ball doing that. And it was a great way to learn life as a small business owner and a consultant. And so when Rachel decided to get into the consultancy side from her end, it made sense that we invoiced it through my business. And so instead of being CMCK sales consultant or whatever, we worked towards Wood Hazel. And there's loads of different stories as to why we call ourselves Wood Hazel, but the nicer one is that we live in a place called Woodside, and we both have hazel eyes, so put wood and hazel, it's Wood Hazel. And that one kind of works, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. But now I kind of want to know the other stories as well. That you've said that,
Let's take too long. This one, because for us, it's all about the people, so we kind of go with the people and the real people behind who we're talking about. And then you started moving more into you saw the opportunity of supporting people. We kind of felt that, because of the life we've, I think when you get to our age as well, you notice that life you've had ups and downs, and you've had to traverse quite a few, jumps, and we've had a lot of change through our life, and we've had quite a varied career. And we could see that actually there was an opportunity here to actually bring this and help people in their world, and to, and a lot of it is around helping people to, build their confidence, resilience, and I suppose just motivation as well, because there's different things going on in life that sometimes you just need that, reassurance that actually you're doing everything right, and and just keep going and finding that way to keep you going. So, you were doing a lot more on the sales side, and you saw an opportunity that actually sometimes people say they have a sales problem, but actually you find maybe their marketing messaging was off. So that kind of why we kind of came together all around kind of helping particularly business owners to market and sell the best of who they are. So that's kind of where we focus our effort.
In particular, people who say they don't like selling, or it's they see it as a dirty word. They use the word salesy. You hear it a lot. Oh, that's too salesy, and you go, well, that's what it is. So we took it back and we said, well, actually, maybe how about if we help people in that area, or people in the area who actually love selling, but actually don't feel comfortable to talk about it in their own workplace because it might be seen to be weak. So therefore we can be working with them individually, or from the corporate end, whereby they want a little bit of advice and support from people who've been around the houses and actually have a little bit with no skin in the game. We're not in the political game anymore because we're working for ourselves. So what you see is what you get.
I think throughout all our career as well, I think, whether it was marketing or sales or any business element, a lot of it comes back to people. It comes back to the relationships you have and the communication and that connection that you build with people. And that for us is, if you can nail that, and that gets you 99% of the way, in most things in life. And for most people, that's, so we're not kind of, you can allocate all the fancy terms and models and frameworks and everything. But sometimes it's good to just bring it back to, look, let's get the core values and principles right here. And it's not rocket science sometimes. If it's communication, talk to people, get comfortable with that. And the art of listening, art of, being respecting other people and empathy toward the other people is something that people sometimes forget. It's not all about me. Sometimes it's more important about the other person.
And if people work with us, they get two for the price of one, from the point of view that we are different, from the point of view that we're different kind of characters anyway. I'm more comfortable in the blue sky, kind of full of ideas. Rachel is a finisher to the core. And that's the teaching background as well. She's very, very good on that element, and is also very good on being the quieter person in the room.
Yeah, I think I'd always champion the quieter person, because I probably was that quieter person in big meetings. So I kind of get it. And I kind of also love to be able to help people to find their voice and just even their voice in their own selves, so they have that self-worth and confidence to be comfortable in who they are.
And so from a leadership perspective, it's always been about trying to help people to, first of all, decide what do they want to lead, who are they, what is their style, and we do the same with regard to sales and marketing, because again, people, instead of trying to tell them what to do, we find out who they are, what they are, and how they want to get there. And our role is to try and help them to do it. We probably are more comfortable. We love working with individuals, and we do like working with small teams. And so most of our work has tended to be in that area. It's not that we don't love the corporate stuff, but I think with our background and the way we work, I think it probably works better if we work from the people and work it back with them. And as I say, our passion is helping people to be able to take themselves and their business to the next level. That's the old networking slogan, as they say.
No, nice. I like it. No, I'm right there with you on the corporates are fine, but I feel like it's quite a bit as well about like the people who need the help most and who won't get it as part of a established training program in a big company. And I think that's true for sales and marketing as much as it is for leadership. I don't know, maybe most businesses might see sales and marketing as more important than leadership, but
Well, I don't know, because I think leadership is core to everything. I'm even thinking in marketing, because a lot of marketing is project work.
Yeah.
And
no, I obviously think that.
Yeah, I know. But we would say that, that we would agree.
Isn't it interesting as well, because when you think about it, a lot of those businesses that maybe have those opinions tend to be the ones that sometimes take their best salesperson or their best marketeer and promote them into a leadership position, and they're absolutely useless at it purely because that's not what they're good at.
Exactly. Which actually is why I found it so interesting when you said that you loved being a sales manager.
Yeah.
And did you enjoy that more than being a salesperson, or was it just kind of
absolutely? Because I was a very average salesperson, but I had a very good eye for who could and would be. But I enjoyed it, and I love meeting people. I love listening, but I really, really, really enjoy helping others to be better. And you can see it in sports scenarios. You know, you look at the Charlton brothers and things like that. Bobby was an amazing footballer, as was Jack, but only one of them was a good leader. You know, because Bobby was a great player, but he probably wasn't the guy to tell people how to do it, because he was just a natural, whereas Jack could spot a good player. He was very specific about what he was, and his leadership style wasn't everyone's. But you speak to any of the people that played for him and they'd all go, oh, we'd run through a wall for him. Or you might get the others who go, well, he wasn't my cup of tea, but I understood what he meant, and I was in no doubt. So that was my style. I did like bringing people together, and in particular, people who said they couldn't sell, or putting people together as a team, rather than a team of superstars, having a team of people who would all actually complement each other and would drive each other to success. You were doing the same thing in marketing, weren't you?
Yeah, I think in marketing, as I say, a lot of where I was working was quite flat structured. So there were only so many levels that people could go. So a lot of the times you were I found out what I was doing was actually helping people to get their next job, because, their next job was me or elsewhere. And at the time I wasn't, like in reality, that was how the process was, so, and I think again, in a marketing function, because you're having to deal with a lot of stakeholders at a senior level, it was very important again to have good leadership qualities, to be able to communicate, and also be able to be comfortable, to be able to put your argument forward, and to hear and to be able to decipher quite quickly, and be agile enough to be adaptable, to stand your ground, but also to hear the wider strategic decisions and things like that. So there was an element of, those sort of qualities had to be taught, and you had to see them in practice. I think a lot of it is practical as well. We can go on the course, the workshops, and be taught what the principles are, but sometimes, you have to overlay them to day to day, and almost practice and experiment. And some of them come more comfortably to you, and some don't, because you play to your strengths naturally, but then you might find you're playing too much to some strengths and getting a little bit, ignoring some of the others. So you're having to, so a lot of that is, and that's what we actually quite like doing, is we love meeting people where they're at, and then kind of applying what's appropriate for their next step to help them to move to where they want to go to.
And when you talk about leadership as well, it's interesting. Some of our discussions have, I don't think we've ever agreed actually as to, is it sales that leads marketing or marketing leads sales? Because old school, it used to be, sales is everything. And then marketing had a massive comeback in the 90s and the noughties, where it definitely took over. But actually what we find is it's whatever works best, isn't it?
Yeah, they both have to work alongside each other. At the end of the day, your customer is really what is either your shareholders or your business, so you have to make the money, but the only way you're going to do that is by understanding your customer. So we all need to have very clear goals of what it is, and we need to work together and I think that's it. It's working together and respecting that each person has a role to play to get to the end.
And as I say,
the sale and onwards.
It's so often we have people go, I've got a massive sales problem, or no, our marketing just isn't right. And then we suddenly end up in discussion and you go, don't think so. I think, and that's where the sales and marketing management comes in, because as I say, classic salespeople or classic marketing people will just go down the route and they'll go, oh, well, do this, and this, and it'll be 100% better and take this. Whereas we like to tease it out and help them to find, because actually 9 times out of 10, they know the answer because it's their business. We're not there to work in their business. We're there to help them to be able to work it better for themselves. And so some of the interesting ones are where people want us to help them grow the business, but sometimes they actually want us to help them to be able to bring it down a little bit, where they don't want to be working as hard as they do, but they want to talk it through about what accounts do I keep, or what element of the business should I focus on. And 9 times out of 10, they can find that actually, although they are doing that, they may end up making more money because actually they've focused on stuff that they really love to do, and the specialism means they can actually charge more. So we take every course or workshop or thing that we do is individualized because everyone is different, and you probably find the same with regard to your podcast as well, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that. I mean, there's so much in what you've both just said, actually, that we could pick into. But I think this particular point is quite interesting because, I mean, first of all, I'm quite cynical about quite a lot of the people out there selling marketing services, for example, because I feel like they do exactly as you've just described. They say you just follow this easy 5-step process or whatever it is, and then by the end of this week, you'll be doing 10K a month. And there's it's nonsense. Like, everyone knows that like, fundamentally, intuitively, that's just rubbish. But everyone buys it, and it's easy to sell because there's that aspirational hope aspect, and the cynic in me thinks they're deliberately preying on that.
They're also going for the old fear thing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, if I don't do that, my business will collapse. And then on the leadership side of it, again, I think and this is why I find it quite difficult doing what I do and trying to sell what I do, because I firmly believe, and I know from experience, there's no such thing as that 5-step process for leadership. Like, I could make something up, I could talk about it, it would probably sound credible, probably would sell, but I don't think I'd be able to sleep at night because I know that that's not going to work for.
Well, we just have
maybe even 2 out of 10 people, it might not even work for. Like, everyone is different, exactly as you've said. And with leadership, it's not just the person, the leader themselves, that is always different. It's all of the however many individuals they're leading as well. They're all different too. So it's not going to, and the same, I guess, with customers for sales and marketing. Everyone is different. It's the individuality, I think, is where that's where the power, the impact really is. And you've got to be able to understand that and not try this sort of cookie cutter, to be American about it, approach.
Yeah, like if it was that easy, sure, would we all be?
Well, quite, yeah.
And that's the beauty of human nature in some ways, is that we are so different, and we are there. It's kind of that's the pleasure that is. If we were all the same and we could put a label around it, and we could actually just, we'd be all robots and we'd just be following a process. But thankfully we're not, and that's why, as you say, leadership is not easy. And I know we'll probably talk about different, coming on this, we were kind of thinking of
different
styles of leadership. And invariably, there's lots, from my experience, I've had lots of really good leaders, but there's elements of them that you can see that they probably could do better on. And there's elements, and in different situations, they might fall down, because that's, again, it's human nature, but people are developing all the time, and they haven't had exposure to different scenarios, so which requires a shift in the approach and as you say, even cultures, and a new person comes into the team and suddenly the whole dynamic shifts, so it kind of throws everything up. So because of that constant, and it's the same with sales and marketing, and that's why we're quite passionate about the fact that because, and I think this is where, there's so much out there, and there's so much there's so much out there, and there's so much information, and there's so much support out there. Sometimes it's kind of, well, what do I need? Where should I be putting my focus? And that's where you kind of have to come back, and they know the answers, and take a bit of quiet time to kind of work out, okay, so let's think about what are you trying to achieve? okay, and we always try and start with what's the quickest way of getting there, to get you, especially in a small business, you need to have a bit of win to keep that motivation, to keep the lights on. And a lot of marketing isn't overnight. Like a lot of people, marketing it has to run constantly. So you're constantly, you need to build the awareness on all those different things. But in the sales, you need to be selling as quickly as you can as well. So they have to be aligned. And
for a variation on David's theme as well is the fact that you do need to fail sometimes, and you do need to actually realize that actually some orders are best to lose. where you aren't the right fit, and sometimes you only learn that by experience, or other times you have to trust your gut and go, we're not right for him and he's not right for us, and all the various bits and bobs. So and that's what, so people who are selling this magic potion that, you're gonna, and everyone's gonna love you, and you're gonna, if you follow yourself with a passion and promote yourself in the right way, then you find the right people. But there will be learnings along the way, but they should be positive experience. We both agree and come from the school of positive experience. So in other words, there is no benefit in beating yourself up for things. It's finding out what you learned. So we promote the positivity and say, you do need to focus on what's going well, but you also need to focus on what you're learning, and the learnings and the positivity, put them together, is your future, isn't it? So you move forward with the knowledge you get from those. But that's not rocket science, or that's not saying, I've reinvented the wheel. That just makes common sense. And there will be people or businesses you come across that, don't.
Yeah. No, I like to call it realistic optimism, because I feel like either one of those unchained is bad for you. But if you put them together,
sometimes being a realist these days, people go, that's not, but that's more the corporate thing, isn't it? And there is a huge change in the corporate world now, because everything has to be brilliant, and you have to be the best, and you have to, but it's also with that goes quite a negative element as well.
I mean, it's not people under pressure, isn't it?
It does, but also when it's not true, it's soul destroying. It really is. Because I've worked in a culture like that where, things were. It's not much of an exaggeration to say things were starting to fall down around us, and yet if you said anything that was perceived as not positive and optimistic, you'd be punished.
And that doesn't help anyone. Like
and hence why these days I don't think it's again, people love to say, post-COVID. I think it was going that way anyway, but it's hard to find in politics and sport and in world. It's so easy to find the negatives and division, and so our thing is, we are trying to spread a positive thing, which is actually, it needs to come from the people, and it needs to come from the people up.
I'm with you. I guess my thing of it is the frustration for me, it was always, and there's loads of memes, and I quite like the way Ricky Gervais, for example, when he explains why he's an atheist. Like the way he talks about it is like I don't need to believe in a higher power to appreciate the greatness that's around me. Like, isn't this enough? That's his core argument. And for me, this whole piece around leadership, about sales, about being in business, about whatever your organization looks like, if there's people working within it, most of them are going to be trying their best. Isn't that enough? Like, can you not be optimistic? Can you not be positive enough about that? You don't have to find or invent something else to shout about. And we're going to get into politics and the social media side of it and all these other things.
That's why what you're saying is it's music to our ears from the point of view, because that's really where we meet people and we say, where are you at? Because not everyone in the team is going to be as committed, I'm going to do 24/7 and on this and that. So we find them where they're at, what they're prepared to do, and then...
Yeah, because it is about what is their motivation, and where, and people are motivated for different things. And some people just want to come in and do their job and do it to the best of their ability. They're not interested in getting to the next level because they like And actually, you need those people in your team. You need, and or else in the same with their business. They just want their business. They don't want to grow it. They just want it to be themselves because they actually love what they're doing. And that's the other thing. If you're, some people don't want to become too successful because get too successful means their business has to grow. They have to get people in, and suddenly they stop doing what they really got into business to do. So it is all about finding, why are people doing what they're doing, and what's the drive behind it, and only by talking to those people can you really understand that. And that actually is the same in sales. You have to understand what's the motivation behind, and what are they looking for and does your product really suit them, or hopefully it does. And yet, obviously, if you can align and show them how you can actually, give them that, fulfill that need and that motivation, then that's great. It's a win-win. And that's where, that you can move away from that salesy thing where people feel something's been pushed on them, or they've been, as you quite rightly highlighted, they've been kind of sold a pup, been sold a falsehood.
Absolutely.
And that's what you don't want, because that's your one-off sales. And then people get cynical about not just your product, but that whole space. And we kind of are quite passionate about that as well, that, you've a duty of, there's an element of, we all live in a society, and we need to be respectful of your role in society as well to some degree. So we kind of like that. So that's why we kind of come from a positive point of view. If you can help somebody else, and hopefully that will help them, so there's that kind of a wider positive wave, which is harder than the negative. Negative, as we all know, is much easier to get pulled into. But if you can try and do the positive and that kind of helping people and encouraging people and respecting people, I think a lot of it is to do with respect as well. I think that goes a lot further, because it build that longer term relationship.
And how long do you want to? Yeah. How long do you want to work with these people? Is it a long term relationship, or is it a one off sale? And so again, sometimes you can see it. They have the same style no matter who they're talking to. They do, and they only do it on the best on this and that. Well, good luck with that. But the key is to reflect what you're hearing. And that it's a two-way conversation. And if it's a long-term relationship, which an awful lot of business is, well, then it's give and take and understanding the buyer, hearing what they're saying. So it's all that combined, really. And we've done well because we're over half an hour in, and that's the first question.
It's all good. It's all good. It's we might drop a few questions, but I think we've covered some of them anyway.
Yeah.
So this whole conversation around the best way to do sales, and there's going to be a debate for that probably for all time, isn't there? The same as what's the best way to lead. But it has reminded me of a conversation I had way back in, I think it was like episode 6 of the podcast when we first started, and we were talking all about first of all, where this kind of bad reputation salespeople have got has come from. And I think most people can agree it's from the idea of like the used car salesman, because that's where the cliche has come from, I think.
I think Monty Python probably helped as well, didn't it?
Yeah. And like the what are they, conservatory door-to-door salespeople as well. They were quite, there's a whole Netflix show about that, in fact. Anyway, let's stay on track, David. And I think for the modern world, like I feel like we've moved beyond that, because actually, car salespeople are pretty good these days. They're great at building relationships. I'm sure there's always exceptions, but and they're quite good at realising that it is about that repeat business, and that people, especially now, cars are sort of turn over pretty quick, don't they? So I think they've kind of modernised. And I was trying to think, well, what's the current equivalent? And I have to say, I think it's the people using automation tools on LinkedIn. I'm going to put it out there. What do you think?
I suppose you might be right in one respect, because it tends to come with newer industries as well. You used to get people back in the 80s as well, where they were talking about stockbrokers, or they were talking about mobile phones, if you remember right. Have I got a deal for you? And they'd be this and they'd be that, bish bash bosh. And and an awful lot of it was that they sign here and all those kind of things. But actually, as those businesses evolve and as they become part, so for example, the electric car has changed the motor industry and things. Not always for the best, because they still probably haven't got it right. And so some of the petrol and diesel are still selling quite nicely, you know. So a lot of it does come, the .com bubble. Do you remember we were all hearing about that, and how many of those businesses went to the wall? I suppose the scary thing for us at the moment is looking at an awful lot of the service industries, like restaurants and things like that are really struggling. And they were very, very, very strong for years, but maybe they took advantage of people, and the ones that are surviving tend to be the ones that are a little bit different and are actually going the extra yard. But so you can nearly do it industry by industry, David, I would think.
But it's interesting you talk about the automation, and I think that comes back to this thing of, if we're not careful, it's going to become very bland. And the only way that you can differentiate yourself, it does come back to the building those relationships and the people element, because you are the difference. Because and therefore you need to get comfortable and being putting your, you know, to kind of be you. And that's why we believe that the best of you is who you really are, the best, you know, rather than trying to be that automated, I have to turn up certain, and that's partly where that salesy thing came from. People felt they had to be this brassy sort of, you know, and the same with leadership. You had to be this kind of really tough guy, you know, kind of, and I say guy, because there was a time there where women were trying to be similar. Yeah. You had to be a specific tough, and you couldn't smile, you couldn't show any vulnerability or any of that. And it's the same with that sales thing. You have to be seen. You can almost see the people doing the process going through, you know, and you're going, no, that's not, people are too wise to that now. So the only way people buy it is by trusting you, and kind of, it's very hard not to buy into authenticity. And I don't mean, but the real people who you can genuinely see an element of vulnerability, an element of, oh, I got that wrong, but actually they've come back from that. You know, it's just the real person, I think, is very hard to not buy into, would be my view. So an interesting thing for you, David, as well would be, like, so we do work with people, say, from an individual basis, to say, how do you want to, and what do you want to achieve? And that's selling, or that's leadership. But sometimes when it comes to the team, we will do work always with the individuals first to find out where they are and what they want to achieve, having spoken to the stakeholder. But one of the first conversations we have with them as a team is, are you a group or are you a team? And an awful lot of people sometimes shy away from this, because actually some you don't always have to be a team. Sometimes actually a group of people coming together doesn't always have to become a team, but you do have to have that discussion as to what are the benefits and what can and can't we do. And that requires honesty and openness. And it requires a very brave leader. And as I say, I think some businesses now are seeing the benefit of this and actually, encouraging their people to have an opinion, but also to come back and say how they can be a better team. And the old world of having this dominant, as Rachel said, male or whatever, just saying you will do it this way, may not be the way that works. So a lot of it is finding what works best for the business, for the people, and more importantly, moving forward, is that going to help them to achieve what they want to do? And so what you were talking about with regard to some of these newer markets, they will get found out at some stage, and then that's where the decider comes, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, maybe I was a bit too general with my statement at the beginning, but I was trying to get a rise out of you, if I'm honest. So I'll admit, a few years back, I did try the automation stuff, and I did try it on LinkedIn, and I think the reason I stopped it is because I, first of all, didn't really feel comfortable with it, because it is about that personal connection, and I don't think you can build that if you're sending out the same copy and pasted message, even if you're not automating it, even if you're literally just copy and pasting it yourself and sending it out to 100 or 1,000 people a week, and nobody's going to reply because they'll read it and they'll see that. I mean, you can tell, I think. Maybe it's intuitive, or maybe people are a bit more intellectual about it, but you can pick up on it if it's a bot or if it's been written by ChatGPT or whatever. And the second reason was it didn't work. So, yeah,
and why did
that was
it
a big
not
one
work?
for me. Because of reason one.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and it's the same with leadership, isn't it? I think it comes down to trust, doesn't it? I mean, you're absolutely right, and I don't think you can't build trust if you're not being yourself, if you're not being authentic. And I think in the sales and the marketing world, having ChatGPT write all your content for you and send all your messages for you, that's not authentic. That's not you. It's literally not you doing it, in exactly the same way as a leader who isn't showing emotion, who's not really asking questions about their people, who doesn't really care about the outcome. Well, they care about the outcome in terms of their paycheck and the bottom line, but they don't care about the outcomes for the individuals or their welfare or any of these things. Of course, nobody's going to trust that sort of leader. Why would you? Well, if you don't have reason to think they at least have part of your best interests at heart, why would you trust them?
Well, part of the conversation is that as well, isn't it? And sometimes that's why it does help to have interactions. Even if people are working from home, you should have interactions where you can be social and find sides to these people that actually, okay, he or she isn't that bad or that good. There's elements that need to be.
Yeah, I think also, like, let's be honest, the automation element is going to be invaluable for elements where getting something out is important, and freeing up the time to do the bespoke stuff and tailoring it. So there are it's about knowing when to use the right tools at the right time, really. So and I always think in any sort of communication, communication is important. And you're right. You need to make sure it's the right communication at the right time. So when you're doing that engagement, you can still, I'm sure there'll be people who will put the argument forward that they can use the automation because they briefed it so carefully and they've given a specific I know, but there will be, I'm sure there will be.
She's now getting it up for you, David.
Yeah, but I'm sure there will, but there will be elements, there will be times where you want to send out a more generic message because you just need to update people on, this is what's happening in my world at the moment, and you just need, and that could be somewhere where it, but I 100% agree with you. When you're actually trying to build a relationship, the best way to do it is to connect with that person as they would like to be connected, and people will connect with you if they feel that you're actually interested in wanting to get to know them, and that's where that genuine turning up as a real person, interested in finding the real person on the other side, is invaluable.
And if you go down following what you were saying as well, you then go down the route. There are whole generations now that don't like the phone and struggle to actually make a telephone call or struggle to have a conversation. They can do a video, or they can do this, they can do that, or they can, but actually real engagement or meeting people face to face, it's problematical for them. Now, I'm not complaining because that creates work for us. And it's an opportunity, but the facts are, people do need to realize that the more you go down the route and take away some of the things that make us better, whilst not ignoring the pluses. And the pluses are that if they can save some of the more boring bits and you can actually implement it into your business, as Rachel said, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I think we also have to respect that different generations as well are at different places in what they're more comfortable with. Like our generation, we do love a good old natter. We do love a conversation. But, some other people like to get it punchy to the point, and because they're busy and they, so you have to respect where people are at as well. But I do think at some point, it's hard to get away from a conversation to really kind of build that relationship.
And it comes from the leader then of that business, of that team, as to how they want to go. And so that's where we're meeting them and saying, right, where do you want to get to? How do you want to do it? And sometimes they might know, but a lot of the time, through listening, that's what it's an age-old thing, but it is 2 ears, 1 mouth, and hearing what people are saying. So the first thing to do is to listen and hear what they want, and then adapt what you've got to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I think any technology, the automation's obviously in the AI, it's the buzz one at the moment, isn't it? But it just comes down to how you use it, doesn't it? As with all these things. And one of my favourite examples of this is totally irrelevant, but it's been going around a lot of like the creative types on LinkedIn and Facebook of late, talking about all these AI tools, and it's like, this is great. So you've created all this AI so that all of the creative work that I enjoy can be done for me, freeing up more of my time to spend on the boring admin tasks that I hate. It's like, this is not what AI is for, guys. You've got it the wrong way around. Please sort this out. And that's the perfect illustration of the problem, isn't it? Is people using these things in the wrong way.
Yeah, I think the other thing, and that's probably where we find sometimes, is when people come to actually having to put themselves out front and centre, if they've been too reliant on getting that front end, their creative and their image and everything presented beautifully, but then they suddenly have to either show up to have that continuity follow through, and it doesn't, because it doesn't really reflect who they are. That's sometimes, and that's where we kind of go, that's where your messaging or your positioning is a little bit off kilter.
Well, you have this fabulous, exactly as Rachel said, you have this fabulous experience right up to when they place the order, and then whoa.
Yeah.
and do you want to go back to that? No. Do you know, the mere fact we have an issue with a supplier over here whereby we still don't know whether we're going to get a bill. Do you know, it's that kind of thing. And you go, well, why are you complaining? Because the bill will come. It's just, they're so inefficient. It's frustrating. You're spending all the time, we're chasing them to tell them that they haven't sent us the bill. You know, it's.
Yeah. And I think also because there's so much in marketing, and this is where sometimes people put so much focus at the front end, as in the prospecting and the awareness, they forget actually the key element is when they have a customer, you want to keep that customer and make sure that you are communicating with them and marketing to them, you know, because there might be an opportunity to upsell, cross-sell, whatever. There, you know, so, and that's a different approach then. So one size does not fit all, and that's where they, the work and helping people, you can't do it all. So you need to focus on what is going to make the difference for you in your business.
So, and Rachel alluded to it earlier, how do you differentiate yourself? And 9 times out of 10, it is going to be the people, and people will remember. And I learned that, as I say, right back to when I first started in the distribution. It wasn't just the salespeople, it was the delivery driver, it was the person on the trade counter, it was the person who answered the phone, it was the admin person. And in Ireland, it's really important to have people who, when they're collecting, you know, the money, because it's a difference, the way we do business over here, because people, they like to be spoken to in certain ways, you know, so the people will make a difference. And I don't think it's old school, but people do buy from people. And yes, you can have the best automation and you can have the slickest, but it was still Steve Jobs who created the feeling with Apple, and it was about people and how they felt, and it was about people. We're not selling to computers, and we're not selling our marketing to machines. It's other people, so it's getting your people to be the best that they can be, and that's our kind of catchphrase, because it is, isn't it?
Yeah, people buy from people, you know, and people do business with people, and that's and what are people? People are emotional people, yeah. And people, you know, interaction is so important, and you can win and lose business that way.
And having different people to represent you is a good thing as well. Not just all men, not just all women or whatever. It's having a mix, race, creed, whatever. It is about actually people building trust and so that's why it is important that you have people who know what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. It's relatability and credibility, I guess, isn't it? I was trying to think of an example where maybe this isn't true, and I don't know that I can. I mean, there are some things, so like during the COVID years, in between lockdowns when we got to go to the pub and you could just order your beer on an app and you didn't have to leave your table, that was pretty cool. I enjoyed that. That's one example. Betraying my social anxiety a bit there, but anyway.
Did you not miss the fact that when you went into the pub, because this is one of the things.
Not in the pubs I go to, no.
But when we went in England, and you would have the guy, and you had the barman who knew you, and a lot of them were Irish, and they were professionally trained, because it was a trade in Ireland, whereas in the UK a lot of the time they would have people who would be students, whereas in Ireland they learnt the trade, but they also learnt how to have a chat, and you come in and they would,
a bit of banter,
and a look at you, David.
You didn't
I mean, there's a couple of my locals now where I have that, but it's not really as much of a thing in the UK, except for any bar people who are on the International Bar Persons Exchange Programme, usually Aussies, or occasionally Kiwis or people from South Africa. They are always way better than any English barman, well, as a rule, in my experience. But anyway.
You get English people then who say, I love coming to Ireland. Why is that? I love going to the pub and they're such good crowd. And the very thing they're saying, well, no, I don't like that in England.
I mean, there's exceptions to every rule, obviously, but maybe I've been going to the wrong sort of pubs.
Well, look at the way pubs have changed as well. They had to.
True.
Did you ever think you'd see the day where you wouldn't go into a smoky pub and the atmosphere
where the food is more important sometimes than the drink now? Well, certainly here it's all about there's more money in the food, so it's. But I think actually, in fairness, David, I think what you're saying is important. I think you have to be adaptable, and you have to, and that's why on meeting somebody and listening to them, some people, you're right, don't want to have gregarious conversations because that's not who they are, and so therefore you need to adapt your style. And some people are, like we would always talk about people in the sales world as well, where business people are busy, so they don't. You kind of have to respect that they have 15 minutes. So there isn't that much, we don't like the luxury we have today of being able to have a good old chat. You wouldn't have that. So you kind of have to work around what works for the person you're talking about, or if they can't, when will they have time to talk a little bit further? So, and if they aren't the sort of people who want loud, boisterous conversation, that's fine. You just adapt to fit and meet them where they're at.
So that's why we take people from zero, where people don't even know the business exists. They've never heard of David Hatch. They don't know. Don't know. Right through to the ones who go, David Hatch, I've been on that podcast a million times. He's a consultant. And you have to be flexible and to be able to deal with those people in different ways. And if you are bringing in people to grow your business, or to, as I said, sometimes to bring it down, to specialize, then you need to get people who are actually going to reflect you, but they don't have to be mini you. They can be people who bring something different. And so leadership, in our opinion, has tended to be the people who are comfortable to be able to have people of difference and to be able to hear other opinion, and when necessary, to be able to make decisions, but to do it where people feel valued, and where there's gratitude, and also where they actually think that people want to develop them and grow them along with the business. It's so the days of a job for life seem to be different, but while people are in the business, they want to be treated as well as they can be, don't they?
Yeah, it's funny when we do some of the work. Some of the I find most rewarding work is when you're working with a group of people who have been their owner is potentially wanting them to be a bit more customer focused, and you might be talking to somebody who's in admin, and they sort of see, I'm just processing the invoice and I'm just moving them from here to here. And it's almost getting them to get that moment of realizing actually, but if you don't get that done, and the reason why, you might have somebody kind of go and getting a bit frustrated if you haven't, put that on the CRM system to say it's been sorted, is because it's delaying getting back to the customer. And a lot of the times it's because they don't realize that. They just think, oh yeah, but my job is just to do this. And then when they suddenly realize, actually, but your job is crucial in this step of servicing our customer. And if you don't do your job well, then Joe can't do his job, and the knock-on effect. And that for me is a really rewarding thing when somebody realizes actually they're not just being brought in to answer the phone and go, hi, how do you do? They are the impact they have on the business is just as important as the CEO in some ways, or the salesperson out in the road, and you can almost feel the energy in the room as you're going through the workshops, as people start to realize, actually, my role is valuable, because sometimes and a lot of it is about positioning, and again, that motivation and that sort of realization of where do I fit in the company. And that for us, that's the bits I love, is kind of when people get that realization that their role is bigger than just an admin role.
The aha moment, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the... I hesitate to say it's one of the most important things a leader can do, because I say that all the time about loads of different things, but it is a really important thing a leader can do. I think it's also something that the bad leaders, the bad managers get wrong perhaps most often, is this sort of idea of just do the thing because I told you to, you don't need to know anything else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But actually that context is so important. Like if you want motivated, happy people, they need to understand why task X, Y, or Z, or why their whole job even matters to the whole business, what their contribution is to the customer, to the people that they're helping, to the bottom line even. Because if they understand that, then they know what they're working towards. They'll work harder, firstly, so all managers want that, right?
Yeah.
But also that if they understand it, then they can take initiative, they can innovate, they can be a bit more passionate about it all as well. And it just creates a better culture too.
And it's the old P word, isn't it? Moving forward with purpose.
Exactly.
And realizing that actually we are in this together. And I know that is kind of the old COVID word and things. But it's amazing how, because when we were talking about who we admired and things like that, and one of the things we noticed about COVID was we had quite a strict lockdown in Ireland. Our Prime Minister, Taoiseach as he's called at the time, actually it was St. Patrick's night, and he sent the country into lockdown on the night of our patron saint, the biggest celebration, and he said, no, this is where it's at, and it was it. And meanwhile you had Mr. X over in America doing what he was doing, trying to put bleach.
Oh, don't. And Boris literally off to the races, saying he was shaking as many hands as he could. Yeah, don't.
So that's when you could see leadership style, wasn't it? And
absolutely.
And we, although we were looking on and everyone's watching the telly and going, this is nuts, we still felt better because we still loved our parents and we still loved our family, and we knew that actually it made sense to do it without going into all the old stuff on that. But leadership was about actually then trusting the medical people and the people who knew best, and then bringing your people with you. And that is really what businesses, I think, are moving towards now, where younger people or people who have been through that now actually want to work for people who actually are going to value them, but aren't necessarily going to be that style. Even though some of our political leaders maybe aren't catching up, but I think business, it makes sense, doesn't it?
It does. I think. I mean, you mentioned earlier, Rachel, about kind of the perception of what leadership is, and it's always about the shouty man usually. And I think it's part of that same thing, isn't it? And part of that same mythos, if you like, was that it'd be the shouty, the man, the suit and tie, always have all the answers. And I think that particularly speaks to this exact thing, is you just like, well, and I think, I mean, whatever you think of the politicians and the individuals, and I've mentioned a name already and I shouldn't have, but they're following this misconception of what leadership is about. And I think in cases like that, especially where no one reasonably expects you to be the expert or to even understand what the experts are telling you, the expectation there is that leaders will trust those experts because they do know, they do understand it. They're giving you that advice because they know and they understand it. So trust that advice. And if you don't trust them, then find a different expert. But don't just make your own decision and ignore everyone.
Yeah.
Just because you think that's what leadership is.
Yeah.
And yes, the COVID is the extreme example, but I think you're right. I think so many business leaders are waking up to that as well now. And that's the halfway point of our two-parter. Thank you for being with us. I hope you've enjoyed it so far. Do come and join us again tomorrow when Rachel, Ciaran and I will be back and we will bring this conversation to a conclusion. In the meantime, if you would like to learn more about them, you will, of course, find their website and social links in the show notes. So please do click on the buttons, click on the links, and go and learn more about Rachel and Ciaran and their very excellent business services. That's all from me today. I'll be back tomorrow. I will see you then. And until then, in the intervening 24 hours, keep being a leader and not a boss.